Better Call Saul is to have 2 more seasons, with season 5 coming out this week. With so much content to cover, there's not enough time to rewatch it all. So, if you want to start from the beginning to understand any references that may pop up, watch my Breaking Bad recap. There'll be a link down in the description. But right here, right now, here's a quick recap of seasons 1 to 4 of Better Call Saul. The season begins after the events of Breaking Bad play out. Saul Goodman has paid someone to change his identity and he's moved away, now managing a Cinnabon. He reminisces about the good old days, watching his old commercials. Jimmy McGill is a public lawyer working cases for little to no money, meaning his office is located at the back of a nail salon where he also sleeps. Craig Kettleman is a high-profile treasurer and is accused of stealing $1.5 million, going to Jimmy for help. However, they eventually decide to go to a real law firm, Hamlin McGill, which was co-founded by Chuck McGill, Jimmy's brother. 2 skaters try to con Jimmy out of some money, but seeing a scam, he decides to make a deal with them. He tells them that one of them must get hit by Mrs. Kettleman's car and he will come in and save the day. They hit the wrong car, however, following it to find themselves at Tuco Salamanca and his grandmother's house. Jimmy convinces Tuco and his friend Nacho to not kill them, settling with broken legs for the boys. Nacho tries to get Jimmy to help him find the Kettleman's stolen money, but he refuses, instead warning them they're in danger. The next morning, they're missing. Nacho is the prime suspect, but threatens to kill Jimmy if he's not released. After talking with Mike Ehrmantraut, an ex-cop, he eventually finds the Kettlemans in the wilderness with the cash. They come back but bribe Jimmy to keep quiet about the money. He uses the money to make a new billboard very similar to that of Hamlin and McGill, eventually told to take it down but stages a fake accident in the process, filming it, hence making himself the hero and getting more customers. Jimmy hides the local paper when visiting his brother, Chuck, who no longer works at the firm due to a very rare illness, electromagnetic hypersensitivity. He steals his neighbor's paper, who thinks he's crazy and so calls the cops. The cops taser him, sending him to the hospital, which is the worst place for him to be, with all the machines around him. However, the doctor turns a machine on without Chuck knowing, proving to Jimmy that this illness is psychological, not physical. Jimmy decides to specialize in elder law, whilst Mike gets a visit from some old cop friends. They're looking into the murder of 2 other cops, who may also be the killer of Mike's son. Using Jimmy as a distraction, Mike steals the officer's notepad. Seeing there's no evidence, he realizes they're the dirty cops, killing them. Kim Wexler is an old friend of Jimmy's who works at HH&M. She declines a job offer from Jimmy and loses the Kettlemans as clients, who decide to go to Jimmy instead. He hires Mike to steal their money, sending them back to the firm to accept the proposed deal. Jimmy realizes that one of his clients' residents is overcharging and with the help of his brother builds a case against them, with Chuck deciding to return to HH&M. They don't want Jimmy working on the case, however, secretly it being Chuck who doesn't want it. Meanwhile, Mike is hired to protect a guy giving stolen pills to Nacho. Jimmy then decides to go back to Chicago and finds his old friend who he used to run scams with. That friend dies, however, during one of their scams. Kim manages to convince Jimmy to take up a job offer at Davis and Maine, and after buying an outlandish car, Mike refuses to continue being the drug dealer's bodyguard, leaving him vulnerable and allowing Nacho to find out where he lives, robbing the place. He calls the cops, who suspect he's a drug dealer. Mike meets with Nacho, threatening to tell Tuco about his dealings. They come to an agreement, with Jimmy convincing the cops to leave the case alone. Without permission from the firm, Jimmy runs a commercial, gaining many clients to help with the case against the elder's residents, and Kim gets in trouble with the firm for being associated with Jimmy. Nacho, seeing how unhinged Tuco is, asks Mike to take him out. He doesn't do assassinations, however, and so instead sets Tuco up by getting him to beat him up in public and hence arrested. Offering $5,000 to Mike, Hector Salamanca wants him to reduce Tuco's sentence. He declines and takes out 2 guys sent to kill him. However, the Salamanca cousins send a threat to his granddaughter instead, leading Mike to cooperate if paid $50,000 instead. After being fired and resigning, Jimmy and Kim open a firm with 2 separate private practices. Changing some files at Chuck's house ensures that a big client goes back to Kim. Wanting to get back at Hector, Mike steals a ton of money but is warned off of killing him. Meanwhile, suspicious, Chuck goes to the copier shop asking if his brother was there, who's already bribed the worker. Chuck collapses, hitting his head, and so covers his house with tin foil to protect himself. Feeling sorry for him, Jimmy reveals that it was him that doctored the files, but claims he will never admit to it publicly, of which we see Chuck was recording the entire time. Howard Hamlin tells Chuck that the recording can't be used as evidence, in which he responds that he has a plan. Mike takes apart his car looking for a tracker, eventually finding it in the gas cap. He replaces it and runs down the battery of the old one, luring whoever placed it to take his. He tracks them to Los Polos Hermanos. Chuck's assistant drops by replacing the tape recorder with batteries, accidentally hearing the recording of Jimmy. He tells Kim, who tells Jimmy. Jimmy then breaks into Chuck's house, fuming, finding the tape and destroying it. However, it was a setup. Jimmy was witnessed breaking and entering. During the trial, Chuck's illness is made public, causing problems for his future in law. Mike meets Gus Fring, who owns Los Polos, who explains that if Hector is killed, they may come looking for him. So instead, they set up the loading lorry by planting cocaine, meaning it is unable to cross the border, leading to the ice cream shop, which is a front, shutting down. Hector then asks for his shipments to be sent using Gus's transports. Chuck leaves HH&M, and Jimmy is not allowed to practice law for a year, meaning he finds a new job as head of the Saul Goodman production company, producing commercials for local businesses. Hector has a heart condition and takes pills to cope with it. Nacho, after his father is threatened by him after refusing to transport Salamanca's drugs, steals one of the pills, asking the drug dealer, who's a pharmacist, to make an exact copy that are fake. Jimmy, meanwhile, in need of some money, pressures his old client to accept the settlement, making him a very rich man. Kim, meanwhile, is having to work twice as hard, leaving her exhausted, causing her to fall asleep at the wheel, getting away with a broken arm. Mike needs to launder his stolen money and so goes to Fring for help, who has just purchased the site of the meth lab in Breaking Bad. He hires Mike, paying him the stolen money until it's all gone. Jimmy loses all his old clients after accidentally leaving his mic on after a yoga session, whereby he claims he hates old people. Meanwhile, Chuck, after seeming like he's improving, goes a little crazy, destroying his house and starting a fire. Chuck does indeed die, leaving Jimmy to mourn for an episode. He needs a new job, however, and so goes to get one at a printer shop, impressing the employers, but Jimmy notices they have a very valuable collection piece and asks Mike if he wants to help him steal and sell it. Mike turns him down, so he hires someone else. He also gets a job at a phone store and gets an idea to start selling burner phones to criminals on the street. Nacho and his partner are ambushed by Gus as he reveals he knows what he did, claiming he is now his. Also, it turns out Chuck cut Jimmy out of the will, but Kim keeps this from him. Gus then meets with Gale, who in Breaking Bad cooks meth with Walter White, but first he needs the lab built, hiring Mike to run the whole operation. He also hires the best specialists to make sure Hector recovers so that he can witness Gus in the future create his empire. Kim joins a big law firm as she's struggling to cope by herself and finds out about Jimmy selling burner phones and agrees to help him free his future bodyguard. She also starts to adopt some of his more dodgier strategies in law. Meanwhile, one of the workers building the meth lab misses his family after a year passes by and asks for a holiday, but when denied he runs away, meaning Mike must kill him. The season finishes with Jimmy getting reinstated as a lawyer as he finally brands himself Saul Goodman.